First of all, this was very like impromptu. The convention started, and I think it was paid. Was just like, hey, if anybody wants to like do a last minute panel, you could do that. And we were like, oh yeah, we've been wanting to do this. So this is like not highly prepared. There's not going to be like slides or anything. I've just got some notes, and then we're going to be doing I'm going to be telling you a couple things, and then we'll be doing an activity together. This is going to be hands on. Um, so, first of all, uh, HTML stands for hypertext markup language. It's very closely related to XML, which is extensible markup language. So in the realm of computer code, there's like a few general types. There's programs, there's scripts, and there's data. Programs are stuff that gets compiled, basically like translated and optimized from the source code that the programmers write into really low level code that like directly tells the computer exactly what to do. Scripts are just kind of run as they are. So just the what the programmer writes, it doesn't like translate the whole thing all at once into a special program. It just kind of interprets it on the fly. And the data is not that, it's not instructions, it's just info. And HTML falls into that latter category. It is information, it's not a program. It's just like what you write down in the HTML document is basically what's supposed to show up. It's the actual content of the page and like vaguely the order that that content is supposed to appear in. CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets. Style sheets, because of what it does, it makes it determines how the things will ultimately look. And cascading, because you can put it in different places on the website to make it apply to different things, which we're not going to be doing. So that's the very basic. So when your browser loads an HTML document, it's basically just there is content and there is how the content will look. There's also like JavaScript and stuff sometimes too, but we're not going to be going over that here. But yeah, so what we're going to do is I'm going to have you all go to that website, htmleditor.gitlab.io. You should be getting you should get like a split screen view where there's a spot for the HTML code on the left side, and then on the right side, it'll render the code. I'm going to give you all a couple minutes, or I don't know, 30 seconds or whatever to get there, and just let me know when you're ready. And of course, if like at any point anybody has any questions, please go ahead and ask them. I should probably be paying attention to panel questions as well, not just the stage channel. Is everybody ready to go? Do we have the website pulled up? Yes, okay, I'm only getting one response, but since nobody's saying no, I'm going to assume that we're all ready. So, your HTML document is made up of what are called elements, and the elements are all like nested inside of each other. I'm in. So you've got there's it starts off. Oh, hold on. I meant to start screen sharing. I should probably do that. Yes, we need to share that. Okay. I should probably, no, that's not what I want. Can I increase the font size? Yes. Cool. You make that real big so everyone can see it. So, at the top, it just says doctype HTML. This literally is you don't need to worry about that. That's literally just, it says it's HTML. This is the first tag that like actually opens. So an element is made up of an opening tag and a closing tag. An opening tag looks like less than tag name greater than. So in this one here, it says this is the opening of the HTML. This is just a parameter. It says it's in English. If you want your page to be in a different language, you can do that. It doesn't actually dictate anything about the content of your page. It just lets the browser know what language the page is supposed to be. And then down at the bottom here, you'll see one that looks similar but has a slash HTML. So that is the closing tag. So HTML element begins here and ends here. Inside of the HTML element, there are two main elements. These are very important. You do have to care about these. The first one is the head. Nothing in the head is supposed to be displayed directly to the viewer, except for the title that goes up here in the bar. Well, okay, it would if this was actually the title of the page that's being viewed, but obviously the page is this whole thing. Anyway, these two things, these meta things, are boilerplate. This just makes sure the browser knows it's supposed to be Unicode, and this is honestly some annoying boilerplate that just makes it be the right size. So you don't have to worry about the boilerplate, but you do have to worry that it's about the page. It's not actually displayed on the page. The title, like I said, that goes up in the title bar. And that'll be like what automatically gets added to the name when like you make a bookmark or whatever. That also comes from this title here. Style, we're going to talk about a bit. That's CSS. And then the head closes. So all of like the meta stuff about the page, that goes in the head. That does not get directly displayed to the user in general. The body is your actual content. So in the body, you're typically going to have a couple different sections, like areas on your page. I'm going to let you know about like the important tags. This, for some reason, by default includes a script tag. We don't need to worry about that. That's JavaScript. I don't know why that's in there. But the like areas on a page are often divided into a few different elements. So you've got your header. So if you just want to follow along, you can if you want, you can rename your page in the title section. So we're going to open a header, and then we're going to go down a bit, and we're going to close the header like this. We're going to go inside the header, and headers usually contain things like a site logo, and the name of the page that you're on. So you might find like the same thing in the header that's in the title or not. Depends on how they design the page. In my header here, I'm going to, I'm going to put an H1 tag. So the header element describes an area on the page. Usually, like conventionally, this is put at the top of the page, like a head. Except that this is also called a head. I don't know. It's there's a lot of things called heads in HTML. And inside we have H1, and H1 stands for heading one. So you have your head, your header, and your heading. There are 6 heading levels, H1 through H6. They the general rule is that you only have one H1 element on a given page, and that should be the title of the page. Um, Anything below that, so anything lower down on the page, any like sections of the page, whatever, if you have headers for those, they should be H2 or smaller. I suspect a lot of this may be due to typesetting and programming jargon overlapping in this context, but I have no proof to back this baseless guess. Could be. I don't know. That would make sense. It's like title, subtitle, subtitle, etc. I think yes. So you want to, when you're using these headings, these H1 through H6, you want them to sort of like organize it the same way you'd organize how do I describe it? It's like, if you have this one section that's labeled with H2 and then you have 2 smaller sections that are part of it, those would both be H3. And if the second one has like a smaller section, that would be H4. So if it's supposed to be like read as if it's inside, then you go down. If it's a new one, then you stay at the same level. Page. Yes. Yes, you're doing great. Okay. Uh Now we're going to look at the main section of the page. I'm gonna let you know about nav. So nav, NAV, is the element that the site navigation is supposed to go in. Because we are just writing one page for now, we're not going to include it. But typically this is found somewhere near the header, somewhere either at the top or the bottom or somewhere on the side. But we're not going to include it for this. Editing. Not typesetting jargon, more likely editing jargon. Yeah, that makes sense. Here, so moving on from the header, we are going to make a main section. And we can actually include this hello world here in our main section. So if we close it after that, then we have inside the header my awesome page, and inside main hello world. So main is going to be the main content of your page. Most of what you put is going to, I know, mind blowing. It's crazy. Never would have predicted this. This is going to be the main content of your page. This is most of what you put on the page, the actual text and images and videos and games, whatever you put on there, most of that is going to appear in the main section. Now there's there's one related to main, or somewhat related, not sure. It's called article. Shout out actually to Not Applicable for introducing us to this one. Apparently, the article element is what the reader view in your browser looks for. So if there's a specific section that you want, that like it should be what shows up under reader view instead of just letting the reader view guess. Apparently, you're supposed to put that in article. that was one that yeah, that was one that we didn't actually hear in school. We heard that from Not Applicable. So shout out to them for that. And then underneath main here, we're going to put a footer. Usually inside a footer, you'll find things like copyright notices. You might find something like an about page might be linked down there. Any like basically any like small information that applies to the whole site that is tucked kind of out of the way but still like easily accessible, that goes in footer. Stuff like that. So the header, the nav if it's applicable, the main, the article if it's applicable, and the footer are like the primary sections of your web page that you're going to be having. Footers are ways to copyright in social links and quick nav on projects. Yep, good spot. Good spot to put it. So you'll notice inside our main and our footer elements, we have these P tags. P just stands for paragraph. So most text is going to go into P tags. So if it's just like any kind of text that's like a regular shape, so it's not like a list or a table or anything like that, it's probably going to be P. And if it's not like a title or subtitle or whatever, because those are the H. Inside of our P tags, we can put other tags. So this is where we get more into the nesting. The nesting is a pretty important component because you'll see like all of this is inside of the body and the body's inside the HTML and this paragraph is inside of main. So inside our paragraph, we're going to add some anchor tags. So A stands for anchor here. And the anchor tag is a link. So this is the hypertext part of the hypertext markup language, or rather, it's the hyper part of the hypertext, where you're not just it's not just plain text; it's text that can do stuff sometimes, and that stuff being mostly links. So inside of your uh, in the same way that the HTML has the lang, we are going to be putting href equals quotes inside of the opening anchor tag. And then you can put any link there. It can be a link to another page on the same site. In that case, it would probably be a what are they called? It would be a relative link. So if it were another page that were on this site and it was in the same folder in the site's directory, then it might just be like other page.html, and clicking on it would take you to that document. But we don't have any other pages on here, so we're going to do a fully qualified URL. So a URL as it appears in your browser's address bar. You can link to whatever you want. I'm going to link to the Minecraft wiki. And then you put text between the tags, and you get a link to the Minecraft wiki. This is like if all you need to do is write down text and link that text to other documents, this is literally all you need. This is technically this is a like a complete web page. But there are a couple other things that you can also add that are pretty important. So we're going to add an image, and I don't have an image pre-prepared. So I'm going to go find one real quick. I'm going to do... Okay. We're going to use this image. We're going to link to file medieval silver gilt buckle frame, treasure case number 2014 T568. Find ID 633530.jpg. Yes, awesome image. So here's our image, and this is the URL of the image. So an image works like an anchor. So IMG here, it stands for image, like A stands for anchor. Image works like an anchor, except instead of href, we're going to type src for source. We're going to open that up. We're going to take the URL, copy that, paste it in there, and then we can close that. That's a little bit big. We can fix that. Images also have built-in height and width attributes. So if I just set the height to 300 pixels, then it'll be 300 pixels tall. Now, a really important note, and you can put whatever you want in that source. So just like in the href for the anchor tag, it can be a fully qualified URL or it can be a relative URL. Images are also the same. So if you've got like your website, wherever it's hosted, you should have the images in the same place as you have the documents, generally, unless you're using like a CDN, a content delivery network, or something like that. But like you don't, if you have your website on like NeoCities or whatever, you don't want to host your images on like Discord or Offsite or whatever. Just put them on NeoCities with the HTML. It works out much better in general. But yeah, so generally when you have images, they're going to be relative addresses instead of full ones. Now, a really important part of the image tag. First of all, you'll notice that this one doesn't close. So the image tag it just exists on its own. It's only the opening. It does not close because there's nothing to go like inside of the image. But we are going to add something to this, which is alt, which is short for alternate text. So this is where your image description goes. Image descriptions are really important. When you're designing a web page, you should be thinking about not only how it will look to people who are accessing it like visually from a desktop or a laptop, but also how it will appear to mobile users, how it will appear to people using screen readers, stuff like that. And alt text is really important because alt text is what a screen reader will read. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure it just says image. And alt text is also what will show up to somebody viewing the page visually if the image itself can't load. Oh yeah, right. It does read the file name. You're right. Yes. Or maybe it depends, because I think I've heard both. Either way, you want to put the alt text, regardless of what it reads if you don't put it. So what actually are these? These are medieval silver gilt buckle frame. What? Hold on. Medieval silver gilt buckle frame. I'm just gonna copy that because I'm not actually entirely sure what these objects are. I, alt Writing alt text works a little bit better when you actually know what you're looking at. But regardless, it's important to have the alt text. Yeah. Well, I'm just not sure what a buckle frame is. Is it like a belt buckle? Anyway. Yeah, okay, okay. Uh, Buckle frame. In fact, we can expand this. Photo. Let's type that correctly. Photo of silver gilt buckle frame from 4 different angles. That works. But yeah, you want to include the alt text and you want to include it in the image tag itself, as opposed to like just kind of writing it outside of the image. That way it's all contained together and it's clear where it belongs. We're also going to look at, there's another tag that you can put inside your paragraph. So we're going to add another paragraph here. And we're going to spell that correctly. So another paragraph, and it's going to say, I like blueberries. Now, we're going to add a span tag. So we're going to open it here, span, blueberries, close span. Span is a tag that goes learning about belt buckles with Alt Human HTML panel. Yeah, who knew we'd learn about belt buckles today? So span is a tag that goes inside of paragraph tags. I think this is the point where we've got to start talking about CSS because that's, as we understand it, what the span tag is mostly for is CSS. So when you are back up, HTML elements tend to fall into a couple different categories with regard to CSS. Or it's called display is what it's called, and the most common kinds of display are. Sorry, I'm blanking on the words. But the first kind is like it stands on its own, and the second kind is inline. There's inline, and there's block. Block is the other one I'm thinking of. There's inline elements and there's block elements. So a block element defines like its whole space that it takes up on its own. And then inline elements just sort of, well, they're in the line. So a block element carves out its own space, its own like height and everything, and then inline elements don't really do that. They just kind of happen after. So this paragraph here, the paragraph is a block element, so it has its own vertical space, and then if you put it after another element, it'll go down to a new line. So you've got the H1 element here, and that And then after that, you've got the paragraph element. And because these are block elements, the paragraph goes on a new line after the H1. That's what it is. But span is an inline element, which means that anything it follows after, it's not going to go on to the next line. So the blueberries stay on the same line, even though they're in a different element because it's an inline element. We're going to use this and we're going to add some style. So style, it's got it up here actually in the style tags. And we're going to put it down here. So the style keyword is how you add CSS directly to a page. Generally, you'll want to put CSS on an external page, but we only have one page to work with, so we've got to put it here. And we're going to make it blue. So the color attribute, this is text color. Color is font color, text color. It's the color of the text. That is what color means. And then blue is, there's a bunch of predefined colors. I should probably back up. So for CSS, for a given element, what you have is the attribute name, followed by a colon, followed by like the settings, and then a semicolon. If you've seen, there are some programming languages where a semicolon like ends a line, like in Java. It does the same thing in CSS. So here, when you apply style to a specific element, it just applies it directly. So the blueberries get to be blue. Fun. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to divs because divs are really kind of whatever you want them to be. And they're also why I told you about header and main and footer and all that first. Oh, it might work if you use a U. Hang on. It doesn't work if you use a U. That's weird. I thought it did. That is kind of rude. Wow. Damn. Rip everyone who's not. Okay. I guess rip non American English speakers. Anyway. Yeah, that's weird. Okay, so I guess it's important to note that things are probably going to use their English spellings, although it does accept gray, Grey, and gray, Gray. So, inconsistent? But yeah, so that you can also put there, you can put like hex codes. So like oh, let's fix that. So you can make it um absurdly yellow and completely unreadable. That's an option. You can also probably do that with the word yellow, but yeah, it accepts hex codes. It accepts RGB values. There, we've got a nice lime green. Yeah, I love yellow on white. It's awesome. But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do the color. Anyway, I was talking about divs. Got me off track with colors. So a div is so if a span is a span is a generic inline element. A div is a generic block element. So we're going to add a div here. And pretty sure it stands for like division or divider or something like that. And inside your div, you can put whatever you want. We could put the image again, but you'll notice that it doesn't look any different from the other image. That's because a div like span is generic. It doesn't do anything on its own. And main doesn't actually, header and main and footer don't actually do a lot on their own, except that they are what's known as semantic. This whole thing, I was supposed to tell you about semantic. This is an important keyword. So semantic HTML is when you use the elements for their intended purpose and you only fall back on generic elements when like you have to. Because these semantic elements like main, rather than using a div for it, it makes it easier to read. I think it makes it better for accessibility, but I don't actually remember that for sure, so don't quote me on that. But it is just generally considered good practice to use these elements where they're supposed to go, rather than using a bunch of divs everywhere and everywhere and everywhere. Although you can use as many divs as you like. Like, you're the one writing the document. I'm telling you what, as far as I'm aware, best practice is, but you're the one writing. Yeah, you can have divs. Yep, you can nest things so deeply if you want to. If you ever open like the source on a lot of websites, especially complicated ones like Discord, you will get yep, it can be a nightmare. If you open the source on a lot of websites, especially complicated ones like Discord, you will get just so much. There's a lot. It gets really deep, and there's a lot of things that we still have yet to get to. I think we're running out of time. Anyway, so divs are generic. You can do whatever you want with them. Whereas, like, the main and the header and the footer, they mean things, and you're supposed to use them. Even though they don't look like anything on their own, they do have meaning on their own. So there's like there are parts of the page that you're supposed to use them in. There's also section, which you can use kind of similarly to div. We've heard that they can be used interchangeably. Personally, we like to use sections just like mainly to make the HTML itself actually seem more sensible and organized. But sections can be dressed up the same way any other elements can. Or like divs. Okay. Where are we? I have some very rough notes. I'm trying to stay on topic. Okay. Next, we're going to look at bold and italics. So if you want, I'm going to add another paragraph here to demonstrate this. So we're going to make some text. We're going to write. I'm really excited for the party. I hope everyone there is nice to me. And we're going to close that. Now we're going to make this italic by using the EM tag. I'm really excited for the party. So EM is for emphasis. The reason that, so there exist I and B elements, which stand for italics and bold. But these are generally, it is discouraged to use these because um, what you are encouraged to use instead are elements like this M for emphasis. So that way, if there's like a screen reader or if the page is being displayed in some other unusual way, then you are communicating. Again, this is semantic. You're communicating to the client that this section of text is supposed to be emphasized, whatever emphasis looks or sounds like in that case, rather than just saying, oh, it's italics, when italics can mean a lot of different things. Uh, for example, italics can also mean the title of a work, such as a video game, in which case you would put it in cite tags. And then where often you might use bold, it is encouraged that you use the strong tag. This, I'll be honest, I do not off the top of my head remember what bold text means. I'm just having a moment. I do know though that bold text can be used for titles or like subtitles, heading, that kind of stuff. And so that is often bolded. So I assume that that's the other scenario where it could be bold. Um, so for loud, yeah, it can also be, but also indicate loud. Yeah. So what's generally encouraged there is strong. I'm really excited for the party. I hope everyone there is nice to me. Uh, yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you. So we've gone over bold and italics. Now I think we can talk a little bit about CSS, a little bit more than we already have. So right now, our page is looking very generic. So it's just rendering with all of the default CSS, or like all of the default rendering settings. CSS is rendering settings. Your CSS is going to look like this, where you have the name of an element, or like you have whatever you're targeting, and then an open curly brace. You've got your list of attributes. So if we want, we can add another. For example, color. And we could say that we want all of the paragraph text on this page to be orange, which is a bad idea, but we can do it. And you'll see that it mostly turned orange. Now here's where we get to the cascading part, because the blueberries are still green. We set them to green down here. The more specific like an attribute is, and then it'll more specific attributes override more general attributes. So if it's targeted at something very specific, then it'll override something that's more general. So up here, we're saying anything in a paragraph is orange, but down here, we're saying this band specifically is this color, RGB 100, 230. Looks like, no, not typing. Okay. So CSS can target um, elements by name. So this targets all of the paragraph elements. We can target all of the image elements. And we can say that we want them to be 400% in width, which is again a really bad idea, but that's an option. And I'm going to go with it. Probably, I know I'm going over. I'm mentioning like a lot of CSS attributes here, and not really like going over each of them or each of the important ones the way I did with the HTML elements. Uh, but I will probably go and find some like reference pages after the panel and link those so you can see like lists of HTML elements and CSS attributes. But we do not have a ton of time left. So, um, the next IDs and classes. So, an element, in addition to its name and whatever other. Sorry, I'm totally blanking. I know that there's got to be a name for these. I'm just going to call them parameters. They're not, I doubt they're called parameters, but whatever other parameters it has. It's also going to have, or it can have classes and IDs. A class is, this will be a better example. We're going to say that this paragraph is of class teal. And then in order to target class teal, instead of just writing teal, we write dot teal. And so we open that and close that. And we're going to say that the color of anything of class teal is teal. And so this paragraph here, the hello world paragraph with the link, it's become teal because it is class teal and we're targeting class teal and making it teal. And if we want the party paragraph to also be teal, then we will add the class to that one and it also becomes teal because paragraphs in general are orange. But anything that's teal or anything that's of class teal is teal. And I do wonder if we reorder these, does it? Okay. Paragraphs are orange, but anything of class teal is teal. And since these are of class teal, then they become teal. There are also IDs. So a class, if you have some class, then that class can be applied to any number of elements on the page, any elements at all. Whatever elements you want to give that class, you can give it to them. An ID, however, is an identifier. So whatever ID you have, we'll say that this first image has an ID of image 1. That only applies, or it's only supposed to apply at least, to that one specific element. IDs can be targeted by CSS, so those you target with a hash. But they're used more often in JavaScript because JavaScript likes to be able to target specific individual elements. How are we on time? We are very much coming up on the end of the hour, and it looks like that panel may have already started. Um, a couple more things. Uh, if we say we change that to say that that's targeting class wide, and actually that won't make sense. I just want to demonstrate one more thing. Uh, of course, you're welcome. I want to just demonstrate one quick thing before we go, and that is that an element can have multiple classes. So if we want the first to be teal and big, and then we want to make the font size of that, mm, let's say 300%, that renders the text big. It doesn't change anything semantically about the text. All it changes is that it looks big if you're viewing it. And is there... Hell yeah! World, I just think fan tags are neat. Awesome. Good page. Yeah, if you guys want to screenshot your pages and post them, either like actually if you want to, if somebody wants to make like a forum post, that would be the place to put that, I think. I think that's pretty much everything I expected to have time for. Does anybody have any super duper quick questions before we end the panel? Is there anything? Oh, people probably been talking. Oh, no, people have been talking in panel questions. Okay. Yeah, this is um if we had planned ahead for this, we probably would have done like this panel on Friday or Saturday and then a follow up on Saturday or Sunday. But as it stands, for the panel was fun. You're welcome. You're very welcome. We really wanted to share like this basic HTML knowledge. And I do want to leave you. I do want to impress upon you that A, you can do whatever you want. And B, if you are making a web page, we only got a little bit of the panel, but it was very good from what we saw. Thanks for the panel. You're welcome. Yeah. A, you can do whatever you want, and B, if you are making a web page that is designed to be public, to be viewed by whomever, you should probably take into account. You should probably be thinking about mobile users and users with screen readers. And that is all that we have time for. Thank you for the confirmative knowledge. You're welcome. Thank you all for coming. Yes, responsive. Responsive is another one. I have on my notes. I have responsive. If time, there is definitely not time for responsive, unfortunately. I wish I could tell you all about responsive. We are out of time, and thank you all for coming. I'm probably gonna close this now. Bye bye.